the Education Scrutiny panel. Are there any apologies for absence?
We have apologies for Miles Langstone and Linda James.
Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is disclosure of personal and prejudicial interests.
I'm not sure how this goes. My son works in Oak for school. He's the techie for their labs. So I don't know if I've got to declare that or not, as we're talking about things for schools.
I can pop you down.
Yeah, I have a son that works for the authority as a teacher.
Okay, great, thanks.
I'll send you the forms after.
Great, thank you. The next item is the prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. There aren't any, I suspect. And the next item, we're racing through here, are letters and minutes. On the minutes, could I'm sure you've probably read through them. Are there any comments on the minutes or the letters? If I could have a proposer then that the minutes be taken as a true record.
I propose.
Sue, and seconded by Mike. Can everybody agree?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Public questions is the next item, and there are none.
Lyndon, sorry to interrupt. Helen seems to have raised a hand. Did you want to say something, Helen? Sorry.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Day. Chair, can I just raise the issue? I'm not sure if it was minuted in the last meeting, but we did discuss the move from ERW to partneriaeth, and in one of the recent scrutiny meetings we did note that a report would be taken to council. I just need to confirm, really, for the record, that the report will go to Cabinet. So the Cabinet members' report to Cabinet is due in November. So just to correct anything that was said previously in previous scrutinies about it going to Council.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Helen. Yeah, thank you. And the next item, public questions, there are none. So moving on very quickly, we've got item 6, which is a verbal update on harassment in schools. And could I welcome Robert Smith, the Cabinet member, and as I said earlier, looking very smart with a tie as usual, so I thought I'd better wear one today as well, and of course Helen Morgan-Rees, our Director of Education. Robert, are you going to kick off with this?
Yes, if I can, and thank you, Chair.
Certainly, yes.
Invitation. Members will be aware of the Everyone Invited website, which came into prominence or come into our awareness in the first half of 2021. And if I can just outline some of the actions that were taken, and then perhaps look at where we go from here. Office has analysed that website and looked specifically at the schools that were named, the Swansea schools that were named on that school. They looked at it and concluded that some of the information was subjective, and then the naming of individual schools wasn't helpful. But more importantly, perhaps they weren't able to cross-reference any of the concerns raised with issues that had been raised by schools with ourselves. So it didn't tally in terms of our own records here as an authority in Swansea. But we did provide support to schools directly, making sure that they had appropriate safeguarding arrangements in place, and the officers report that they felt reassured by what they were told by the schools, that yes, that there were safeguarding procedures were in place and that those were robust, and schools were then supported to deal with any press inquiries. In the meantime, of course, the Minister, on behalf of Welsh Government, has commissioned Estyn to undertake a thematic review of the issues raised, and that work is ongoing. No draft report has been seen, and we haven't seen the outputs of that, but it will be interesting when that comes. In terms of the broader agenda, because we do take this as seriously as a council, the Education and Child Protection Safeguarding Officer has led work linking the new pilot for the new relationships and sex education curriculum with the whole education approach to violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence. She's redistributed the Welsh Government guidance on peer and peer sexual abuse in schools and developed the contractual safeguarding approach across all schools, and produced an autumn newsletter which outlines key approaches and resources for schools. What I think it's important to note is that, you know, those actions, and I thank the officers who've been dealing with this for the effort that's gone into it. Those actions are in part in response to the website, but I think it's got to be seen as an ongoing commitment by ourselves as a council that we don't want to see any harassment in our schools. We want to promote positive relationships. We want to respond to issues as they arise, but it's about ensuring healthy relationships and that all learners feel safe and comfortable in the environment in which they find themselves. And I think, you know, that's not a task and finish. That is something that's ongoing and has to be a core responsibility for all our staff centrally in schools and for ourselves as elected members and also as governors. So, you know, this is something that we certainly take seriously and needs to be seen as an ongoing piece of work rather than something that is going to be in response to certain allegations on a website. Important though it is that we've responded to those, let's get down to the real issue here.
Great. Thank you very much. Have we any questions to Robert? There are no hands up. Oh yes, there is. Mike Day, Councillor Mike Day.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Robert. It's reassuring to hear what's being done, and obviously, as you said, it's a very serious matter and needs to be considered as an ongoing issue, as you've mentioned. Do we keep any records, either centrally or in schools, of any allegations or complaints made under these headings?
Yes, I mean the schools would adhere to the policies they've got, and they would alert the authority in incident circumstances. Yes. And Helen, if you want to come in, and Helen is with us.
Yeah.
Yes.
About the exact process.
Yeah, I mean, for the Everyone's Invited website, there was no confirmation that these allegations took place within the school environment. So we know across Swansea, out of the 91 schools named nationally, there were 6 in Swansea. But those allegations and disclosures, I would call them, rather than allegations, on the national website, they could have been historic, they could have been things that happened in the community and not necessarily within the parameters of a school environment. So I think it's important really that the schools keep a log of all unacceptable behaviour. Anything that's in discord really with the school's behaviour policy is absolutely something that needs to be noted, because obviously these behaviours are something that needs to be sanctioned appropriately, but we are also very keen to make sure that schools are taking preventative measures, as the Cabinet member pointed out, the prevention really and the promotion of a values-based education, and the promotion of respect and dignity for all pupils, no matter who they are, is absolutely important. So I think, yes, it's a school's responsibility to actually log and keep a record of behaviours that are unwarranted and not desirable.
I appreciate that. It is a question of prevention, and education, as you said, is the starting point. I suppose the question that's going through my mind is then, how confident would pupils, and for that matter staff, feel in raising complaints under these headings with the school, rather than having to go outside to other websites?
I think part of our safeguarding training to schools makes it abundantly clear that adults really need to be seen as safe people to go towards and to lean towards within a school environment, and to be able to disclose and share in confidence, really, where appropriate, that they have endured behaviours that are absolutely undesirable and warranted. Then I think we create a safe environment through our safeguarding policies in schools. And I think the confidence that a learner who's faced some really difficult, challenging behaviours from other pupils, from peers in this instance, because this is what we're talking about in terms of sexual harassment from peers, I think that confidence needs to be reinvigorated and replayed to learners in schools, so that they are always aware, really, that there is a safe place to go to, whether it's a pastoral member of staff, a year group tutor, or anybody else. There should be somebody within the school environment where children feel confident, either in secondary schools or primary schools, that they can go to a trusted adult, and there should be many of them, not just one or two.
And I think, Mike, when I said a safe and comfortable environment for all learners, this is something that needs to be part of it. That yes, we don't want these kind of issues to arise, but we want a culture where they do arise, all young people and staff know where to go and how to access, and how to access support, and that they know that they will be listened to. I mean, that's important as well.
Good, thank you. I get 2 hands up. Al first, and then Steve.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the updates. Yeah, I suppose just in line with Mike's possible question, but not to read anything into his that he didn't ask. But I suppose the suggestion, and maybe the reason for us bringing this to the panel's attention was because of the suspicion that things are being brushed under the carpet in schools or kept below the radar, and they aren't being escalated. So I suppose the assurance that we're seeking is that these lines of communication are open, there are well-defined, proper old-fashioned ring as well, that there are well-defined categories of behaviour that aren't acceptable. I suppose it's all that messaging that we're really looking for assurance on, that it's clear to everyone what those communication paths are. As you say, Councillor Smith, that we want everyone to feel that they can talk to someone, but are those, do we have any evidence, and I don't know whether or not this has been something that you've collated, that things are being brushed under the carpet or not being brushed under the carpet? Because that was kind of what was in the media, wasn't it? So do we have any intelligence on that, please?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is a really important question you ask. The answer really is when this came to light in the press of our 6 schools in Swansea, before the Minister engaged with the education regulator and asked Estyn to undertake some investigation around this, he actually wrote to each school in Wales, and he wrote to each of the head teachers in our 6 schools in Swansea and asked for assurances around these matters almost immediately. And we supported our schools in drafting their responses, but they didn't need much support because they were so confident, really, in their own procedures that they were very keen to express. I mean, initially they were potentially a little bit cross that they were being challenged on this, given their track record. But then we encouraged them to celebrate what they were doing and to demonstrate very clearly the range of policies and procedures they have around values-based education, keeping learners safe within their school environment. And I think that was a real positive to actually celebrate the good. And because we have such close links in terms of safeguarding, in terms of the training of staff in our schools around safeguarding, and the Wales procedures for safeguarding being shared and understood by staff members across our schools, we're very much aware, really, that this is a top priority for us, and it's a top priority for our schools as well. So, and it's been a top priority for a long time. And I don't think anybody is resting on their laurels where safeguarding is concerned. We keep a close eye on things and we monitor things carefully in terms of training as well.
Great,
to answer the specific questions, yes, we've let the schools know, we've reminded them what the procedures are, And what we want is a consistent approach across the whole of Swansea, so that, you know, something that is not acceptable in one school and are not acceptable in another. That's not what we want. There needs to be a consistent approach in all schools on this issue.
Great, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
These allegations, and I come from past experience, are very, very difficult to investigate. Very easy to allege and sometimes very difficult to disprove. But there's a couple of things I want to pick up on, and Helen, don't take this the wrong way, but I don't like the word should. It's either in place or not. So, I'd like to be comfortable in the response from both yourself and the cabinet member that all these items are in place. We have in all the schools staff members who these pupils are able to go to, feel comfortable to go to, right across the board, as Alex has mentioned this, and Rob, this has to be consistent across the whole of the school area. And you mentioned policies and procedures. I've done the safeguarding training, and both here, elsewhere, and other organisations, and trained it. And sometimes it'll go into somebody's ear and it'll go out the other side, and they don't do anything about it. And it's understood by staff. Yes, I don't doubt this, but it's the pupils that need to understand all these messages. It's the communication with the pupils that needs to be understood, so that those who, and I've got a 14-year-old granddaughter and it scares the life out of me, believe me, but we got to have trust in the pupils that they are sensible, that they know who to talk to and they know where to go. And this, at the moment, I'm not 100% convinced that all pupils in every one of our schools would know who to go to and how it would be dealt with. And perhaps that is something which is ongoing, and you can come back and confirm in the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Steve. I think quite an important, in fact, very important point. Robert, Helen, would you like to come back?
Yeah, I mean, it would be wrong to give 100% guarantee at this stage. We can come back to you with some figures to support exactly what we've said in terms of training. And obviously the voice of pupils is absolutely key in all of this, because as you say, we can have all the policies and procedures in place, but the actual lived experience of any child or young person is absolutely key. And there will always be children who slip through the net in terms of not having the confidence to turn to a trusted adult. So it's very difficult to say on a 100% basis. We can definitely confirm that this is happening in all cases across all schools, because that lack of confidence for some learners will be a barrier to them disclosing at this particular time in their life, and it may take years for them to be able to build the confidence to disclose at a later date. But we will do some more work, and we'll come back to you with some supporting evidence really to support really the position of strength that we perceive we have in Swansea.
And I think some of it goes back to what I said earlier. This is about influencing people's attitudes, it's about influencing young people's attitudes. And that will always be an ongoing piece of work, and it won't be something that's a task and finish, because we need to ensure that those positive attitudes are inculcated in all children very early on.
Is there a possibility that there could be a sort of telephone line that some people who are too worried to tell a member of staff, perhaps, or feel it's a little bit too much for them to do that they could make a call to somebody within the council and to discuss their worries and concerns of what's happening to them, possibly, rather like you get the helplines that are ongoing, and maybe sometimes because people do look up to their teachers and head teachers, and maybe that might be a step too far for some children. And maybe a telephone line that they could ring to report anything that would be confidential, and so on. And they may feel happier to do that. And I don't know if that is something that could be considered.
Very good idea,
or what
Chair.
Other members think about that, I should say as well.
Yeah, Childline celebrates its 35th year Childline UK this year in November, and the celebrations will be at the start of November. But we do have a National Safeguarding Week in Wales beginning on the 15th of November. And that would be an opportune moment really to signpost our schools to the agencies and organisations who are available to children really on top of what's provided in schools. So it would be a golden opportunity then to signpost further.
Yeah, just thinking that obviously it's really, really important that pupils have that safe place to report any abuse or racism or whatever, and I think that is important. The great majority of pupils will tell their teacher or a member of staff in that school or the head, but some may not have that confidence to do that, and I think they should also have that opportunity. And whether it's internal, somebody in the council itself, rather than go that step to Childline or whatever, and it can be dealt with, or it's done as you suggest, Helen, but with Childline. But it could be internal, and somebody who would be responsible for it in the council, and hopefully would not be a well-used line, but nevertheless it does give that extra safeguard, perhaps. Okay, and any other? Oh, Cyril, sorry, Cyril's hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Question to Ellen. I know this is about the harassment for children. Have you had any complaints of harassment of teachers, especially female teachers?
So I'm guessing, Councillor Anderson, you're referring to adults harassing adults or pupils harassing adults? Would it be?
We talking of children abusing children. I'm talking, have we had children abusing teachers or adult teachers abusing female teachers,
Yeah, children pupils sometimes cross the line in terms of their conduct, their behaviours, and some of the behaviours actually go into the territory of what you would deem as harassment to female members of staff and to male members of staff. So that does happen, and obviously the appropriate behaviour policies are in place. And the appropriate sanctions are there really, and will be considered by schools. It won't be tolerated because it's inappropriate. It is part of the expectation of all our schools that the conduct is becoming of pupils, and if those lines are crossed, then there have to be consequences really to deal with that.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you both very much, because it's something that we all care about, and it's something that we all take extremely seriously. And we're very pleased that obviously the council is taking. Oh, excuse me, I'm having a visitor here. Take very seriously as well. So great. Thank you both very much indeed. Right. The next item on the agenda is Welsh in education. In education and our strategic plan, and I know that Rodri is here, and Helen, Rodri, Robert, who is going to kick off and present the report.
That'll be me, if that's okay, Chair.
That's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm just bringing the presentation up on screen. Hopefully, IT doesn't let me down. There we go. So hopefully everybody can see the presentation in front of them. Feel free to flick through it at your will. The joys of the PowerPoint Live is that you can flick back and forth without impacting on what I'm saying or where the slides are going. So yeah, today's about giving you an update on where we are with our Welsh in Education strategic plan. As you'll see there, it will be a plan running from 2022 to 2032. In the past, the WESP, as we call it, to make it a bit quicker and easier, was a 3-year plan, which set out really how local authorities in Wales would not only deliver Welsh medium education, but provide places in our schools for those that wish to be taught through the medium of Welsh. As we know, there's been a lot from Welsh Government over the past few years strategically about the Welsh language and the increased use of the Welsh language in our communities and in our schools. So to give us a bit of that sort of statutory and strategic background, we're all well aware of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And within that, we talk about Wales that works towards having a vibrant culture and thriving Welsh language. Then we've got further documents such as Prosperity for All, the National Strategy. There's talk then about the transformational approach to learning, teaching and assessment of Welsh, with the aim of ensuring that in future, all learners will be able to use the Welsh language when they leave school. So a really energetic thought of that, doesn't matter which school you go into, that you're on some kind of language journey, a language continuum. Then the one that most people are aware of is the Welsh Government's target of having 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. And then in education in Wales, the national mission, then the desire for learners to become increasingly bilingual. And what I'd add there is increasingly multilingual with a strong grasp of other languages. So the statutory education system's got obviously a vital role to play when the Welsh Government are looking towards 1 million Welsh speakers in Wales. That is probably the easiest yardstick to see where we are on that journey at any given point in time. So as a result of this, that's why they've changed how local authorities plan Welsh medium education. The barometer that Welsh Government have started off with is looking at the number of learners we have in year 2 in our Welsh medium primary schools. So as it currently stands, when they were looking at it in 2018-2019, we had 23% of our pupils being taught through the medium of Welsh. So that's across Wales. So the target that the Welsh Government has set themselves is, so by the end of our first WESP in 2031-32 there, that 30% of all learners will be taught through the medium of Welsh when they're in year 2 in primary school, and then 40% by that 1 million Welsh speaker target of 2050. For us to come anywhere near 1 million Welsh speakers in Wales, those are the targets that will need to be hit. As well as those targets, there's a couple more key things that will help us along the way. So we're looking at transforming how we teach Welsh to all learners. So with that target, then a much bigger target, that 70% of those learners by 2050 are leaving school able to use the language. There's a big debate on what using the language means. Does that mean going into a cafe and say, I'd like a paned day of sgwelch yn dda, can I have a cup of tea, please? Or does that mean that we can have that full conversation in Welsh? And personally, I think if we're realistic about 1 million Welsh speakers, it's the latter of those, being able to hold a conversation in the through the medium of Welsh. So some very interesting, challenging targets, but not ones we're going to be shying away from. So what are the requirements of our WESP? Well, as I started off by showing you what the figures are in year 2, straight away there's been a change. So where we'll be measuring is year 1, that first statutory age of education, which makes perfect sense. Really. So why we started with year 2, I'm not sure, but year 1 makes perfect sense when children start on that statutory journey through education. So that's where we'll be looking at. And then the target that we set in our plan has to be supported by a statement of how we're going to get there. So to set that target is being set by Welsh Government for us. They've split local authorities into 4 different groups. Ourselves here in Swansea coming out in Group 3. And local authorities who are in Group 3, as you see on screen there, have currently between 14 and 19% of their year 1 children being taught through the medium of Welsh. It may be that a Welsh medium community is the norm in one or a very small number of communities in the area. I think we'd agree that's fair to say on Swansea. And there's usually that choice between English and Welsh medium, which is true here in Swansea. A number of local authorities have a sort of mixed economy where you've got bilingual schools, but here in Swansea, you've got that clear choice to be made, be it a faith school, English medium school, Welsh medium school. So there's a clear choice for our parents here in Swansea. So that's what sets us in Swansea into Group 3. I think it doesn't really matter which group we're in. We get into the nitty-gritty of what that target will be for Swansea and how we set out to deliver that target. So here are the key figures in Swansea. When we started looking at our draft plan in 2019-20, we had 390 pupils in year 1 being taught in Welsh medium education. So that's 15.4%. I think it's important to note here that we focus on the percentage as well as the numbers, because as we know, numbers in schools can fluctuate. And in past years, we've seen a big drop in the birth rate in Swansea. So if we focus on pure numbers, then we can get into a muddle on where we are on our journey to meet those targets. So we'll really be focusing on the percentage of the current cohort when we're measuring on an annual basis. So the lower range target by Welsh Government is set with the million Welsh speakers target in mind. So if all local authorities in Wales meet their lower range target, then that will get them where they think they need to be for 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. But as they keep telling us, there is an upper range. Obviously, don't just target that lower range. If you find yourself going on a journey quicker than you thought you would, there's no reason why you'd say, oh, stop, we've reached our lower target. So there's somewhere in between the two targets is where they'd like us to be aiming. So yeah, the big question: how on earth do we get there? How on earth do things change to such an extent across Swansea and across Wales that we start on that journey towards the 1 million Welsh speakers? Here in Swansea, the current admission number in January 2021 shows us with 495 places available in our Welsh medium primary schools. Important to note, this takes into account the additional places that we are just about to deliver in YGG Tyrdaenau and YGG Tanalan, with the very exciting introduction of new buildings for these 2 new schools, modern learning environments fit for the future of numerous generations of children and young people in Swansea. I've seen plenty of recent images and videos showing that they're very close to have our learners in those great learning environments. So we're taking those into consideration at this time. So what that shows us straight away is we have got quite a bit of room already within our Welsh medium sector to start moving towards the target that's being set for us. So what it does leave us there, as you see there, it leaves us pretty much with 3 forms. We'd need 3 more year 1 classes being taught through the medium of Welsh between now and the end of the plan. So the next question, obviously, is how do you find 3 forms? When I've discussed this with senior officers and with the cabinet member and his colleagues, it's important straight away not to focus on, right, where are we opening these 3 new Welsh medium schools? That's not where we're at in Swansea. It's important that we have a look at this as a journey to providing something. Firstly, we need a real focus on filling the places that we have in our Welsh medium schools currently. Over a number of years, and see Mr. Councillor Mike Day on the call. Councillor Day will remember that year on year there was an increase in demand for Welsh medium education. For a number of years, just like 6-7% increase in demand for Welsh medium education. Both in Swansea and across Wales, we have seen a plateau. Without a doubt, there has been a plateau with the numbers going into Welsh medium schools. So the key thing for us to focus on is filling those places that we already have available. As we start along that journey, we continue to monitor the demand from parents for the provision, and then we plan accordingly as we go through the years of the plan. So the first area you target is obviously the early years. That is when parents and families are making decisions about which education their children will go into. So it's about looking at how we promote bilingualism. It's important to note here, it's promotion of bilingualism. It's not about promoting an English medium primary school or a Welsh medium primary school in one area over the other. It's the benefits of bilingualism to our learners. And that will also include bilingualism within the English medium settings. It's not all about saying you must go to a Welsh medium primary school. It is about promoting the language journey that our learners will be in, doesn't matter what school they're in. There's a lot of work happening with the new curriculum about bilingualism, multilingualism, and that is a strong strand of where we'll be looking throughout our journey. So as we see there, the importance of filling the places, monitoring an increase in demand. And if that demand continues to increase, yes, we will need to look at where in Swansea would the next Welsh medium primary school. How do you then deliver additional Welsh medium places? And also the strong link with the transport offer as well. When we currently look at transport, we understand that Welsh Government are looking at how transport is provided across the whole education setup. But obviously, as a council as well, we have a strong focus on the climate change agenda. So how do both of those marry up? One can't sit away from the other. We can't sit in one meeting and say, yeah, free buses for everyone so they can go to a Welsh medium primary school, and then in a different meeting on the same day say we've got a climate crisis. So there's balances to be found with all the strategies that local authorities and Welsh Government are working through. So our 10-year vision, unbelievably, I managed to get this down to 5 points, but I think it was about 23 when I wrote it initially in my first language of Welsh, but I've managed to get it down to 5. So providing equal opportunities for all learners to learn Welsh, as I mentioned, that's going to be true whichever school they go into, and so they can speak the language confidently, and we continue to promote the benefits of bilingualism. It's really important that our learners going through the education system realise what's out there in the big world when they are fully bilingual, leaving our schools. The job opportunities, and it's getting away from people thinking, oh, you get a job in the media, you can get a job in Welsh Government, and that's the end of it. Every job, most of the jobs available in our economy would benefit from somebody being bilingual, without a doubt. And as more people speak Welsh and use it more in their communities, more and more opportunities will be there for them. And we're better to work than our schools, our education providers locally. So yes, looking to increase the percentage of pupils opting for Welsh medium education and to ensure that it's available and accessible to all learners within reasonable travelling distance from their homes. The learners who have attended Welsh medium setting in primary school phase will be encouraged and expected to continue with this into the secondary phase. In Swansea, we've been very successful at this over the years, where once children are in Welsh medium settings, they do tend then pretty much nearly all, to use Estyn terminology, in normal times are moving from primary school, Welsh medium primary schools to Welsh medium secondary schools. I'll be honest and say there has been some differences there as a result of COVID, where families and possible learners have lost some confidence in the use of the Welsh language, when parents weren't feeling as confident at home in providing that support, and when schools weren't able to fully immerse their learners in learning and playing and conversing through the medium of Welsh. So we're working with our schools currently to see how we make sure that was what I deem a COVID blip rather than something that carries on into the future. So to ensure significant, apologies, move on to the next slide. So to ensure significant growth in Welsh medium education, to increase the number of people of all ages who become fluent in Welsh, English and other languages, who can use their languages confidently with their families, friends, neighbours and in the workplace. As somebody who coaches football at a local level, I coach an under-11s team. People ask me, why do you coach football? And I said, I was never that good at football. For me, it's about helping our learners with their communication skills. And everything that runs through this plan is about communication skills. If we can have young people leaving school confident communicators with adults and people of all ages, then we are setting them up well for the world of work. So if they can do that bilingually, multilingually, it gives them those additional skills when they go out into the economy and hopefully stay locally to find jobs and opportunities. And then we aspire through this plan, the Swansea plays a huge part in the Welsh Government's journey towards 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. As well as the overall targets, we are set with 7 outcomes that we have to work on as local authorities as part of that journey of delivering our WESP. In the full presentation that has either been shared with you beforehand or will be shared after the meeting, it'll give you a bit more detail on each of those. I'll just touch upon quickly, Chair, if that's okay, on just a few of these areas, just to give you a flavour of what we'll be working on.
Great, thank you.
So outcome 1, more nursery children receive their education through the medium of Welsh. So obviously there we need to look at the provision across our area, be that preschool with our flying start settings, working with the childcare sector. Promotion's a huge part of this, promoting to our communities across Swansea and across Wales the benefits of being bilingual. The admissions process, looking at how if when you come in to thinking of getting an education for your child for the first time, you're a first-time parent, what is that admission process journey like for that parent? Is it a friendly process? Are you given a clear choice early on of saying here's what's available? So it's carrying out a review to see what's available for all our children and their families. Training. What training is available to the childcare sector? What are they sharing with parents in our flying start settings? Talking of flying start settings, what's the Welsh language offer like in our flying start settings? We've got one specific Welsh language flying start setting, but what are we offering in the others? What are we letting families know about the bilingual provision that we have available in Swansea? Transport. Transport is always a hot potato as far as education is concerned. Be it, is there transport available? Be you live close enough to get free transport or not? And it's no different here. As it currently stands, there's no transport provided for our nursery settings. But if we realistically want young families to consider a Welsh medium education, how does transport fit into that? And it's not necessarily about putting on specific buses. It's looking at what the network is like, where the provision is compared to where our parents are living. And as touched upon as well, working with our childcare settings, and it's very timely that the childcare self-assessment is currently out with our providers, so we can work with our providers in helping them with training and offering more Welsh language in their settings. The second one then, more reception places, so that obviously follows on well from the nursery settings. So it's making sure really that as the increase happens in our early year settings, that we're answering the call once they get into our schools, and making the most obviously of the various grants the Welsh Government have available at the moment and hopefully in the future to support this. Because obviously if we are realistic, there will have to be capital and revenue funding available for local authorities to support them on this journey. And we're hearing the right noises on that, but we'll work with Welsh Government as officers and with members to ensure that we make the most of those opportunities. Under outcome 2 as well, we touch upon the latecomers provision. So for those who decide after making that initial decision, or if they move into the area, on making a provision available for those who want to switch over from English medium, or if they're coming from other countries and we're supporting them from other countries, that those opportunities are available. There's some excellent case studies from colleagues in the local authorities where children and their families have left various places in the world for numerous reasons, and within a year they're fully bilingual in Welsh and English in a Welsh medium primary school. You know, as in we should never put a cap on who should come into Welsh medium education. So there's a lot to focus on ensuring that there's equality and equity in who can actually have access to our Welsh medium education. So the latecomers provision in Swansea, we currently provide a peripatetic model that allows pupils around Key Stage 2 to have immersion with other like-minded children and their families to get them ready to be with their peers in the classroom. So we'll be carrying out a review of how we deliver that here in Swansea and looking at further opportunities later on in life. There's models across Wales where this can happen in secondary schools as well. Outcome 3 then, it's about retention, keeping people within Welsh medium education once we get them in there. and supporting our learners to become multilingual. An idea we have once we get the plan in place, that our schools will have a language plan in place that looks at how they focus on different languages, and this should fit in well with the new curriculum. Outcome 4 then, it's about the studying their courses through the medium of Welsh and getting their exam results through the medium of Welsh. Again, we're very lucky in both our Welsh medium comprehensive schools here in Swansea that practically 100% of their courses are offered through the medium of Welsh. So it's about supporting our schools to ensure that can continue, but then working with our partners in the college to ensure that the Welsh language offer can be increased in the college as well. From meetings I've had with colleagues in the college, this is already happening, and there's really positive moves towards offering that full breadth of what our colleges and sixth form can offer our pupils, so they can make an informed choice at the right time then. Coming towards the end, outcome number 5, and this is a key one for me. It's opportunities for using Welsh outside of the classroom. Yes, we can immerse them within the classroom and get them ready for their exams, etc. But it's just as important, if not more important, that they have those opportunities outside the classroom to use their Welsh in social settings. So be that working with partners like Mentor Iaith, the Urdd, but all kinds of other organisations out there, and putting things in place ourselves so they can use the Welsh language outside of the school, be that in sport, be that in music. There's so many opportunities out there. So it's working with our schools and partners to make sure that we make the most of those opportunities. Outcome 6 then is the focus on our pupils with additional learning needs, and this sits alongside the new ALN Act that is coming in at this current point in time. So making sure that our ALN pupils can have the right support at the right time when they need it. Specific support is already in place, and when a pupil needs that support and their family needs that support, we are there to provide that support. So it's looking at how we provide that support in the future, but also as more and more pupils get educated through the medium of Welsh, the likelihood is that you will then have more Welsh-speaking pupils with additional learning needs. So it's making sure that as we move forward, either locally or regionally, that we are able to answer the needs of those pupils. And finally then, outcome 7 is the one that brings it all together, that we need to be able to staff this. So if we're getting to a point where the percentages I've mentioned are going into Welsh medium education, as an education sector across the country, we need to have the right staff in place to deliver that, be it teachers, teaching assistants, and other staff working in our schools. So it's a difficult balance, as in that there's no point lying saying that, oh, it's easier, we'll find them. It's not an easy task. And also remembering as well, it's not just about creating staff to be working in our Welsh medium schools. It's just as important that we have staff within our English medium settings that can take those pupils on that Welsh language journey. So huge challenges ahead, but it's one that we will face head on. So the vision here in Swansea is development of Welsh medium education is clear, robust and ambitious. So as you've seen, the work is multifaceted and multi-layered, and there's a lot of work for us to be done. Once, firstly, our consultation is finished. So the WESP is currently out for consultation until the middle of next month. Once the consultation is finished, the reports will then be presented to Cabinet for approval in early January. And then we submit our draft WESP to the Minister for final approval before the end of January. The Minister can then decide to approve as it stands, suggest amendments, or send it back. I'm not even thinking about that option. So as you can imagine, various partners are already responding, colleagues in schools are already responding. So we hope to have a very good response during the consultation, so that we can further shape what Welsh medium education and the delivery of Welsh medium education across all settings will look like over the next 10 years. Thank you, Chair.
Rodri, thank you very much indeed. That was a pretty comprehensive report, and I can see we've already got a hand up. Yeah, Al.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rodri, for that incredibly ambitious strategic plan. Wow. Yeah, so it looks amazing. Yeah, and it'd be brilliant to get to that. And obviously, that's the ambition. But I think you've finished with the key point, that the crux of it, really, that the training of teachers is key to this. And it seems like, you know, without the support of Welsh Government, really making sure that, well, basically every teacher in Wales should be trained to speak the language. Unless they're delivering it confidently through the language, I don't see how we're going to get to that, but maybe that's my own ignorance. But yeah, I mean, what's your view on that? Is it subject to the approval of the Welsh Government that they will then, you know, we can sign off on our plan, because we can only do so much at the local level? Thank you.
No, you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. As in, there's plenty we can do before you get to that point. But yeah, it's something that the whole profession will have to get on board with. It's encouraging that our teacher training providers locally are doing a lot on with new teachers into the system on promotion of the Welsh language, but also getting them up to a level to start using the language in the classroom, and that's now being used more and more. But you are right. It's a long journey. It's a very ambitious journey for sure. But it's one I think that I'm getting more and more noise that the Welsh Government are signed up to it. I think the biggest challenge is definitely the staffing. So we can have that plan in place and run with it, but then the whole system has to come together then to ensure that we can push it where it needs to go.
Great, thank you, Al. There's it's Mike Day. Mike, you've got your hand up, and then followed by Robert. Mike.
Did Robert want to come in connection with Alex?
Well, it was just to echo really what Rodri said, because you know this outlines what we as a council are able to do. But you know, there needs to be support from Welsh Government for this. They need to play their part, and other agencies as well. Schools on their own won't achieve the target of 1 million speakers. There has to be a community-wide approach to this. Yes, the role of schools is going to be crucial, but they can't do it all on their own. Now, the local universities have been providing sabbatical schemes. They've been providing in-service opportunities for serving teachers, which I think is important. But you know, that needs to be supported by Welsh Government. The initial teacher training needs to be supported by Welsh Government. So there needs to be, as I said, a combined effort on this.
Great, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Rodri. I welcome the overall 10-year vision and strategic plan for the development of Welsh education, and it's good to see that you know, we've got some definite actions and proposals to move forward. There are a few things that I'd probably like to pick up on. First of all, would be clearly it needs to be approved in the first place, but subsequently I would imagine then we would need to have it broken down into annual plans, or you know, biannual plans, in order to see how the delivery is going to go, and then also to have a mechanism for assessment against those plans and objectives. So I'd like to talk a little bit about, or to hear a little bit more about, how that plan, or how the overall strategic plan is going to be monitored and assessed. And linked in with that then, and it's an issue I suppose for Robert and the Cabinet, would be a question of what resources would be available in order to deliver that. You know, Al's made a very important point in connection with the teacher training element of it, and that doesn't come cheaply. We need to ensure that that is supported. So, you know, that would be the other issue. I think one of the wider issues is that of the confidence levels, you know, particularly for those who are expected to teach some Welsh in English medium schools. And, you know, that comes as a challenge. You know, from a, you know, Welsh learner's point of view myself, it's more the confidence to be able to express the thoughts and so on in the Welsh language. And you know, I think, you know, that provides us, as it were, with a platform for a wider council initiative. And, you know, Robert, you know, just from the Cabinet's perspective, it would be great. I know that in the past, schools have had like kind of European weeks or whatever. 1st of March next year, could we have a Welsh week where everyone is encouraged to use Welsh in some form or another? It goes beyond the education framework, as it were, but nevertheless it provides a real flag in the sand, as it were, as to where we're heading as far as the Welsh language is concerned. Things like, for example, a very important point that you made earlier on, Rodri, about people being aware of the benefits of learning Welsh and how that would enhance their career opportunities within Wales. And I mean, as a supporter of bilingual education, it enhances your career prospects generally, I believe. And I know, sort of grateful that we've got somebody like Robert, who's Welsh language speaker himself and fully supportive of this. And I would hope, Robert, that maybe some sort of week-long program of activities could be developed, to support that program. It may well already be in place, but it'd be interesting to hear a bit more.
Yeah,
about
we can certainly look into that. Yes. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? And Rodri, do you want to come back?
Yeah, shall I come back? That'd be great. Yeah, so as far as once we've got the plan, you're absolutely right. There will have to be a clear annual action plan. Even if it's just to keep me on track, it'll be, because I think it's such a wide-ranging plan. As in, one thing I described in having discussions is it's important that it doesn't become a plan that sits there and then annually I rush around thinking, oh, what have we done for that? There has to be a clear, accountable action plan for us as officers to make sure that they're going in the right direction. We'll be required to give the Welsh Government an annual appraisal of where we're at as well. But obviously, there's also opportunities for changes to the plan along the way. So obviously, a lot can happen in 10 years. If we see that there's a massive move towards Welsh medium education, then we will need to review our overall WESP so that we're saying, and our aim is to open a school here and here, if we get to that point where the demand keeps on increasing. Focusing on what you were saying about confidence levels, you're absolutely right. We've got a lot of Welsh speakers already in the system, working in a number of our English medium schools who are fluent Welsh speakers, but they haven't got that confidence to use it in the classroom. So it's about supporting those if they wish, and it's not about forcing, oh, you're the Welsh speaker, you can do it. It's about encouraging, coaxing and providing opportunities for them. The sabbaticals that are out there are really successful, but in a way within our plan, we've set down a challenge for Welsh Government, as in our aspiration in Swansea is that we could offer a sabbatical to a member of foundation phase staff in each of our English medium primary schools by the end of the plan. So that sets a challenge for Welsh Government to put the funding in place and the resource in place so that the universities can provide that offer. So hopefully stuff like that will start supporting people. On the annual event, we have got a plan within education as part of our draft WESP for what we deem Gwobrau Siwmai. It'll be the Siwmai Annual Awards, which will focus on the good things that are happening in our schools, so sharing the best practice across the school settings. And I think I can't say that enough, that there's so much good things happening in our English medium schools as far as Welsh language is concerned. From talking to a colleague working in the Eirdd who attended one of our primary schools, and she said she arrived early, so the head said, come into the assembly, and she said, I could have sworn I was in a Welsh primary school, she said, because the whole assembly was practically being delivered through the medium of Welsh. So there's so many good things out there. It's important, and I'm as guilty as anyone, we don't celebrate successes enough. So it's important that we celebrate the successes of the really good work that often individuals or small groups of staff are doing in our schools that have a big impact on our pupils. So yeah, from an education perspective, definitely we'll look into that.
And if I can just go back to what I said earlier about opportunities to celebrate and promote Welsh language. We're lucky that we've got a critical mass in Swansea. The percentage of Welsh speakers isn't that high in a lot of areas, but when you consider the quantum, the number of Welsh speakers, there is that critical mass that can sustain activities better than some other areas, I feel, and that's certainly something we need to take forward. We've got the 2 universities on our doorstep. We've got organisations that Rodri mentioned, like the Mentor Iaith here and so on, that we can link into. And I think that it's bringing people together, and we all work in tandem on it.
Great, thank you. Al.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back in, just on a tiny little note, it's really encouraging to hear you talking about joining up, because it seems to me, as a Welsh learner myself, and picking up on Mike's point, it's the opportunities to learn it outside. It'd be sad if this was seen as something about education only. It's about life in Wales. And it's really, what are those opportunities? Where are those Welsh language venues with their gigs going on, and the theatre and all the rest of it in Swansea? And this isn't just a challenge to Swansea, it's a challenge to Wales. You know, the Korean government has invested heavily in their film industry, and now Korean films are everywhere in the world, and everyone wants to learn Korean. But there's no reason why we couldn't have a national film. And maybe Swansea could found that national film school. I don't know. But anyway, just that, throw the gauntlet down, and the opportunities beyond education are where they are. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And I think in a nutshell, we're saying really that, as Rodri rightly said, it's really important. The plan doesn't gather dust, and it's actually, it can be monitored as you go along to see where you are, and really important that it is a living document, so that it can change to upgrade it, or whatever you need to do as the time goes on. And I think those are 3 key sort of tests, really. So great. If nobody's got any other questions, can I thank Rodri for a really comprehensive report, and the work that's gone in to put that plan together. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Chair, sorry, just to follow on from that, could we expect regular updates on the progress through the process?
I think that is quite important. As I mentioned, the plan doesn't gather dust, and that we do monitor that as we go on. And I think it is important on each year that we get some sort of update, so we know where we are towards achieving those important goals. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is progress with the introduction of the new curriculum. And can I welcome Damien, who flashed up on our screens. And I think, Damien, you're going to present that report. Robert, do you want to come in first, or?
No, I think I'll hand over to Damien, and then perhaps I can come in at the end, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah, no, fine. Damien.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I won't put the report up on the screen as I did in the previous meeting, because you would have had the report in the paper, in the agenda pack. So I'll just go through with any updates, with any other points, if I may. So looking at the report, then, if I refer to paragraph 1.1, it refers to the overall strategy for education in Wales, our national mission. That was updated in October 2020, and the update takes account of OECD's recommendations. And the recommendations included developing a shared understanding of what the vision looked like, and supporting the realisation of the curriculum with expert groups. And there's more recommendations, but something with regard to the expert groups, there's a national network that's recently been established or created, and I'll refer to that later on as well. So that expert groups of practitioners within Wales discussing issues that are relevant to schools as they think about their new curriculum. And that's what the update was. It was an update on progress made to the point of publication and reminders of Welsh Government's commitments. So moving on to paragraph 1.2, it refers there to schools requiring schools to create a curriculum based on the needs of their learners. So this is a shift, because teachers have been delivering a curriculum and the content, since 1988 really, and it's gone through a few iterations, but often it was heavy on content, as much heavy on content as it was on knowledge and skills. And this is different from such prescribed curricula. The curriculum design now will determine what knowledge and skills and experiences will support learner progress, and it's for schools to decide what knowledge, skills and experiences will support their learners, and how these will be sequenced. So that's different from delivering a curriculum that we've been given. On to 1.3, you know about the 4-phase implementation plan. The 4 phases were evaluate curriculum, the current curriculum, plan and design the new curriculum, trial and refine the curriculum, and then implement, monitor and review the curriculum. And in 1.4, we talk about when the plan was launched and how the plan signposted evidence-based approaches and areas on Welsh Government's website, such as myth busting. 1.5, the SCTAG group, it referenced there that the SCTAG group, the work was paused because of the pandemic. And in terms of resuming the work of SCTAG, which is in the considerations and recommendations at the end of the document, we need to be mindful not to duplicate the work of Welsh Government and our regional partners. They've been able to spend time during the pandemic creating resources, advice and professional learning. And perhaps it will be a role for SCTAG to signpost and share good practice rather than creating more resources and delivering in the future. And if this is a way forward, we'll need to monitor the quality of that provision through the collaboration with our schools, because they're the end users at the end of the day of the resources and the support. So in paragraph 1.6, it refers to the journey to 2022, which was updated in September, and the phases in the Welsh Government's publication, they do echo what was in the Swansea curriculum plan in terms of engagement, design, plan and trial, evaluate and prepare, and first teaching. And then in 1.7, you'll see that it refers to the Welsh Government did announce that secondary schools could delay the implementation to September 23, but could opt to implement the curriculum for Wales in 2022 with the Year 7. And my understanding is that there are secondary schools who are seriously considering triggering that option, and Gowett, Morriston and Pentrahaf are being examples. And we're discussing this with the secondary schools during our support visits, so I should have a more clear picture at the end of the term when the support visits are complete as to which secondary schools will be opting to introduce the curriculum in 2022 for their Year 7 pupils. So I'm skipping past 1.8 and going down to 2.1. As I mentioned above, the regions and the Welsh Government, the work of the Welsh Government and the regions, that's continued apace really, despite the preparations of schools and local authorities being slowed because of obvious reasons with the pandemic. With paragraph 2.2, I mentioned the continuity of learning and the SCASEN networks when I last visited Scrutiny, and the networks, there's strong networking in Swansea, and Welsh Government are advocating their national network. So it's about that professional dialogue, and it's helping schools to prepare despite the challenges. With 2.3, there are some things that perhaps will never go away. It talks about the virtual sessions. We're in a virtual, an online meeting now. Will we ever go back to face-to-face? Governor training, governor attendance there was an increase due to, the efficiency, if you like, of the online meetings. So, I think some things will stay. And in paragraph 2.4, we talked about I mentioned the Welsh Government continued their preparations, but on times it's been difficult to keep up with the volume of information coming from Welsh Government, particularly for our schools. Last summer there were 8 consultations. There's a consultation out at the moment. So what we've responded to each and every consultation as a local authority, and we've worked with our networks like the Continuity of Learning Group and like SCASEN to get school leader input. In 2.5, there's a reference to the assessment arrangement consultation, which I just referred to. This closes next week. It places a number of duties on head teachers and gives directions to governing bodies and head teachers and local authorities. So again, we've liaised with school leaders with regard to responding to the consultation. In 2.6, it talks about the RSE framework, and I'm actually jumping ahead to 2.8 in one respect, in that an RVE and an RSE advisor is now in post. But to go back to 2.6 to talk about some of the work that Jennifer Harding-Richards has been, she's been very proactive, only 2 months into post, but already working alongside Welsh Government to support the RSE pilot with, I think it's, nearly 17 schools in Swansea, working with local communities to support the RSE code and guidance, setting up networks, that word again, for both primary and secondary RSE leads, delivering a series of professional learning sessions to senior leadership teams and governors, creating shared spaces for resources, working collaboratively with colleagues in Port Talbot on things like Holocaust Memorial Day. So working really hard with colleagues as well and members of the community on SACRA. So that's sort of an RSE, she's working hard there. And with 2.7, you know, there's been a strong sorry, the RSE, the SACRA, etc., is linked to 2.7. And then 2.8, I've mentioned the work of Jennifer. Jennifer's been, you know, superb in making those networks. She's come along to speak to primary heads. She's spoken to secondary colleagues. She wants to work with SACRA and get more representation from the community. So, you know, an excellent start for Jennifer. And we'll be working with our colleagues in schools to provide resources for them, such as, you know, policies that they can adapt and use. So yeah, a really positive start for Jennifer. And then in 2.9, I've mentioned to you in previous meetings about the work of Mick Waters, but we're working with Mick this term to collaborate with colleagues in our Flying Start Link teachers on sessions that will deepen understanding of child development and use of observational assessment, both of which are referred to in guidance that accompanies the assessment consultation that's out at the moment. So, you know, that there is work that we're preparing and sessions we're preparing for schools to engage with. And then the Great Teaching Toolkit, which is the second bullet point, it's evidence-based action research that schools can engage with. You know, Professor Robert Coe is involved in that. Our former colleague who is now in Pembroke, Robert Davis, is a strong advocate of the Great Teaching Toolkit. And I was in a school just this week where I know the school's engaging with the Great Teaching Toolkit, and teachers are carrying out action research with it, I suppose, a little A and a little R, back in their classrooms with regard to, in this case, it was regard to feedback and how that can help learners make progress. So racing on then to 3.1 into the conclusions and the summary. You know, it talks about SCTAG's work, and to repeat what I mentioned earlier, SCTAG, we need to align with the work of Partneriaeth, the new regional partners. They have the following curriculum objectives in their business plan, their draft business plan, and it's to realise the school vision, or to help schools realise their vision and aspiration, to embody the 4 purposes. It's to support schools be designers of their own inclusive, authentic and meaningful curriculums. It's to develop effective and varied use of pedagogy. It's to be informed in developments in qualifications and assessments, collaborate with and between settings to develop and share their thinking, and to deliver appropriate support for the renew and reform agenda post COVID-19. Not that we are post COVID-19 yet. Now, it also needs to share good practice in the work undertaken in our support visits this term. So we're gathering intelligence, if you like, of what's going on in our schools and what we need to what we should share. And I've been in 3 schools this week, and each school has got something that is worth telling other schools about, and we're building this into our head teacher meetings moving forward. What is important, though, again, I'm repeating myself, is that if we are signposting our schools to the offer of curriculum development and professional learning from our regional partners, is that we do make sure that the quality of what's being provided in schools, and we do hold our regional partners to account, if you like, and say, right, we're sending our schools to you for this support. We want to know that that support is of the best quality it can be. In 3.2, I've mentioned the assessment consultation probably at least 4 times in my summary of this report. It instructs schools to design their assessment arrangements at the same time as their curriculum arrangements. It's an actual direction. This is assuming the consultation doesn't, that the final version doesn't change enormously from the consultation. So if it stays as is, pretty much, there will be direction for head teachers and governing bodies to design their assessment arrangements at the same time as curriculum arrangements, and they must be kept under review. But it recognises that this is not going to be finished and never has to be relooked at by September 22. And in fact, there's also a direction in there that schools need to review. They're suggesting termly, both within the school, beyond the school, within their clusters, and even beyond the clusters. So that's out for consultation at the moment. And then 3.3, the high quality professional learning. Again, I've mentioned aligning with our regional partners, but also for us to be aware of what Welsh Government is offering in terms of networks. I've mentioned the national network. There's national network conversations taking place in October. They're there now on Hub, and the conversations, there's contributions from people like Professor Robert Banerjee, and this month's conversations are looking at progression, they're looking at preparation. Are we on the right track? There's conversation about resources and supporting materials, and future conversations will look at well-being in learning, how schools approach that, how diversity is in the curriculum for Wales, evaluation and improvement. So that's a new, if you like, entity, the national network, that's certainly worth keeping an eye on, and certainly worth hopefully signposting to our schools, which we could do through our weekly newsletter to schools. And then 3.4, it talks about school improvement advisors needing to sensitively monitor and support schools in the area. It is, preparations for curriculum for Wales are an agenda item, and to be fair to schools, despite the restrictions, despite the challenges, they are moving towards, they are making preparations, they are moving towards being able to implement it, and schools, they've got to commend them for their efforts in that regard. And then from point 4 onwards, I don't have any additional comments other than what you already see in the paper. So that's it from me, Chair, with regard to update from that, but obviously it might be questions.
Great. Can I say thank you very much for the briefing. Questions? Robert, sorry, Robert.
Yeah, can I just thank Damien for introducing the report and for the work that's gone into this, because I know our staff, both in schools and in the authority itself, have given 100% to this over a long time now, and of course it's probably the wrong time to be trying to implement a new curriculum in the middle of a pandemic, cutting across all the preparations. I feel in a way, and I'm repeating myself all through the meeting, because again I'm saying, this is not a task and finish exercise. the new curriculum, unlike the old one, is going to be an evolving entity. As teachers in our schools respond to learners' needs, as they respond to research evidence, as they respond to assessment evidence, it's all going to be a developmental process moving forward. A potentially very exciting thing for professionals to be involved with, but it does come with added pressures as well. And I think the way our staff across the system in Swansea have responded has been first class. And it's our job then to make sure that that the support is provided, that the methods of sharing good practice and putting people in touch with others working on similar projects, that those are in place. And I'm sure that we've got the officers to do that as well, Chair. So it's thanks all around.
Thank you. Al.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much for the presentation. Yeah, just apologies if you mentioned this already. I had to pop out for a minute then. But in point 3.1, the journey to curriculum rollout, officers will need to consider re-establishing the curriculum teaching and assessment group. So is that you are considering the re-establishment of it, or you are going to re-establish it, please?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did make reference to it in terms of when we first created the SCTAG group, the Swansea Curriculum Teaching and Assessment Group. We created our implementation plan. We were looking at how schools would evaluate their current curriculum, what they should be thinking about when they're planning, if you like, the sequence of work and then trialing their curriculum. That work has really been overtaken, if you like, by what Welsh Government have been able to provide and the regional partners. However, so rather than re-establishing it for that purpose, which is to inform schools and give resources and support, if you like, I suppose it's more a case of repurposing SCTAG to signpost so that we can share. Councillor Smith mentioned it just now, sharing good practice that's out there. So having that intelligence of knowing what's going on in Swansea, knowing what's going on in the national network. So we need to have the right people on SCTAG. I think we need to rethink the name so that it's easier to say as well, quite frankly. We need to also, I mentioned to you, I was, really heartened, if you like, by the fact that some of our secondary schools are seriously thinking of taking that option and bringing the new curriculum in, or the curriculum for Wales in September 22. So it's, again, sharing good practice. How's that going with our secondary schools? And it's about what we can learn from one another. So having representation from our primaries and our secondaries and all of our settings in Swansea, that will work for the benefit of all Swansea schools. So I think there's still a role for SCTAG, but it's the sort of purpose it serves needs to be revisited. So I can update you on that in future meetings, should you wish.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, did you want to come back, or you?
No, Chair, no, it's like a hand is up. Yeah.
Can I say in point 3.2, you mentioned, Damien, the concerns remain over schools' capacity to engage fully with curricular reform, and that is a worry. And I think when Robert chaired the Policy Development Committee, that's something that we were concerned about then, actually, because if we don't get that right, there's only one set of people that will suffer, and that's the pupils themselves, and that is vital. And the other thing is when we're getting teachers to engage properly. Currently, obviously, a lot of the work is prescriptive. With the new curriculum, it's not, and for some teachers, it's their dream, and you can see it. And when you speak to them, wow, they're so enthusiastic because they can put their own stamp on what they want to do, and they can really have that, and they have that vision. But other people, it's their worst nightmare, and it's not entirely their fault because that's the journey that they've been on. But we need to be holding their hand on that journey as well, while we make those changes. And those two, I think, are quite critical to the, if we want, and as we do, the curriculum to be a great success. So I don't know if you have any comments.
Well, if I could just say, I think you've highlighted two issues there, and I'd agree with you wholeheartedly there. There are some teachers that are eager to look forward to this, and others need more support. And I think the fact that we have our school support teams within Swansea and now working with Partneriaeth in future, that's going to be a crucial part of supporting those, or supporting all teachers on what is a crucial journey.
Great, thank you very much, Robert. And I know that we've talked about this in other meetings in the past, and it is a concern. But I know that you know about that concern, and will be, it's obviously something that you will be looking at. So great. Any other questions? Otherwise, can I thank Damien very much indeed for a very thorough report, and thank you, and we look forward to updates. And I agree with you, Scatag or whatever, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue. So great, thank you very much. And the final item on the agenda, I'm pleased to tell you, is the work programme. And looking at it, I almost said we were going to have an away day, but we're not actually. It's going to be online. So, but we're going to be meeting the head and chair of governors of Morriston Comprehensive School at the next meeting. Michelle, anything you need to add for that?
No, today. No, that's confirmed. And you're meeting with, having a pre-meeting with the challenge advisor beforehand, or school improvement advisor as they're called now. So that will be at 3:30, and at 4 o'clock the meeting will start with the school.
Al, is your hand up historically, or?
That may be a matter of opinion, Chair, but no, I have put it up again. I just wondered if you finished with that particular item. I just wondered whether or not we could bring another item to the attention of the panel, which is the energy issue that's facing schools and the council and just society in general. It seems to me, I'm paying the lecky and the gas the same as everybody else, but schools really do need to keep the lights on. And I'm just wondering whether or not there's room for us to review in this panel what the council's approach to managing this energy crisis is, if in fact it exists and is going to impact on education. I'm interested in the views of the panel and our director, please.
Do you want me to respond? I'm just
Helen, yes,
wondering, Councillor Roberts, whether we could combine that in our discussion on budget, which is in the forward plan, I believe. Michelle, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be an opportune moment to build it into that agenda, if that's suitable.
Sounds brilliant.
I'm very happy because it is an issue that is concerning people. Very happy for that to, and if everybody else is. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks. And that is actually in February, the 14th of February. Actually. Great. Thank you, Helen. Do you need to come back with anything at all?
No, just my thanks to officers who've attended, participated and planned for today. Really grateful for everything. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Helen, and Damien and Rodri, actually, for really important contributions and reports today, and of course our cabinet member, Councillor Robert Smith. And thank you all. As you don't have to go very far, I don't have to say have a safe journey home. I shall see you all soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well.